This is Chris McGrath, TDN, welcoming you to the next installment of the Life's Work project, partnering with Keeneland and the University of Kentucky's Nunn Center for Oral History. We're so lucky that some of the most accomplished figures in our industry have agreed to share some memories of their lives and careers and the great horses and horsemen they've encountered. And we're very grateful today to have been invited to the historic Darby Dan farm to meet with Mr. John Phillips.
Grandfather loved, first of all, he loved Hail to Reason. I'm never really sure why, he just liked Hail to Reason. So he was one of the original shareholders in that. And so he had a desire to run in Europe. And he talked to Olin and said, Olin, if Americans are sort of doing this now, let's take a shot at it. What horse do you think would work? And Olin picked out the horse out of Bramley. And he said, fine, we'll send this Hail to Reason out of Bramley off to Europe, and let's pick out the best trainer that we possibly can. And that was, of course, Vincent O'Brien. And off he went with a ridiculous notion that some America just pick out one horse and go off to Europe and actually win the English Derby, but that was Grandfather. He wanted to try it, and it turned out to be, brilliant. And that was Roberto. And sort of the side on that is that Roberto was named after a baseball player by the name of Roberto Clemente. Roberto Clemente was a great baseball player, and he came up in a very difficult era, as many of the players did. So when Grandfather bought a baseball team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, he hired Branch Rickey. Grandfather was a classic American in the sense that he really believed in American values. And Branch Rickey was a very intentional hire. Branch Rickey, of course, was the general manager who brought Jackie Robinson to baseball. And so the Pittsburgh Pirates ended up recruiting, if you will, a lot of minority players. And they had a tremendous amount of talent, one of which was a Puerto Rican who spoke very little English, was available to be drafted essentially away from the Los Angeles Dodgers. And he was an African-American as well. That was Roberto Clemente. And if you understood the 60s, which were turbulent, and the discomfort that John Galbraith had, and in particular his son Dan had, with segregation in the South, and then trying to relate to people being an Ohio farm boy, essentially, to people who grew up differently, had different influences. Nonetheless, there was a real effort to do that. And Roberto Clemente became maybe the classic symbol of what the Pittsburgh Pirates and what the Galbraith family stood for, and that was, this is America, it's a meritocracy. It doesn't make any difference if you're Italian-American, Polish-American, and it was not a popular thing. But it did drive Roberto Clemente, in a sense, closer to the Galbraith family. It was a relationship that was cemented. So when Roberto Clemente became a close friend, also he was not just a friend, but he was a brilliant baseball player, very sensitive, very committed human being. And so Grandfather wanted to name what he thought was going to be one of his best horses in honor of Roberto Clemente, and that was Roberto the Horse. And coincidentally, Roberto the Horse was a great athlete as well. He was an Irish champion at 2, won the English Derby at 3, beat Brigadier Gerard in one of the great upsets of all time, and it was a great moment for Grandfather. And sadly, Roberto Clemente was killed in a plane crash delivering humanitarian supplies to Nicaragua in 1972, and never got to see Roberto the Horse. But he was very familiar with it, very aware of it, and it was a common joy that they shared.